is for the quality and service you have the right to expect from Paul Bunyan. When and where did this mythical hero get his start? Paul Bunyan is known by his mighty works. His antecedents and personal history are lost in doubt. You can prove that Paul logged off North Dakota and grubbed the stumps, not only by the fact that there are no traces of pine forest in that state, but by the testimony of old-timers who saw it done. On the other hand, Paul's parentage and birth date are unknown. Like Topsy, he just growed. Nobody cared to know his origin until the professors got after him. As long as he stayed around the camps, his previous history was treated with the customary consideration, and he was asked no questions. But when he broke into college, it was all off. Then he had to have ancestors, a birthday, and all sorts of vital statistics. For now, Paul is recognized as a regular myth, and students of folklore are making scientific research of the Paul Bunyan legend. R.R. Fenska, professor of forest engineering, New York State College of Forestry, Syracuse University, an authority on Paul Bunyan, writes, "He is not only an all-American myth, but as far as can be determined, the only myth or legend in this country. It is all-American because Paul's exploits are all accomplished on this continent, and there is no counterpart in the Old World. The origin of Paul is as much a myth as the legend itself. There are some who feel that he was known in the northeastern forest back in the early 19th century, but the best available evidence points to the pineries of the Lake States as the mother of Paul Bunyan. It is certain that he developed to the zenith of his powers in that region during the 80s and 90s. Professor Fenska points out that Paul was a northerner, for when the virgin forests of the Lake States began to wane and the lumberjack shifted to the southern yellow pine region, little was heard of him for nearly a decade. Noting his reappearance on the Pacific coast, this authority discounts the rumors that Paul has gone to Alaska and expresses the opinion that his greatest exploits will take place in the vast forests of the West. Esther Shepard, Department of English, Reed College, Portland, Oregon, has traced the Paul Bunyan legend back to Maine, but finds evidence of beginnings that antedate the Maine epoch, and is still carrying on her painstaking search for the ultimate source. Writing in the Pacific Review, Mrs. Shepard relates this one about Paul's babyhood. Paul Bunyan was born in Maine. When 3 weeks old, he rolled around so much in his sleep that he destroyed 4 square miles of standing timber. Then they built a floating cradle for him and anchored it off Eastport. When Paul rocked in his cradle, it caused a 75-foot tide in the Bay of Fundy, and several villages were washed away. He couldn't be wakened, however, until the British Navy was called out and fired broadsides for 7 hours. When Paul stepped out of his cradle, he sank 7 warships, and the British government seized his cradle and used the timber to build 7 more. That saved Nova Scotia from becoming an island, but the tides in the Bay of Fundy haven't subsided yet. Seeing that this North American continent has only one myth that is entirely its own, J.M. Lever of the Pacific Lumber Company writes in a San Francisco paper, "It is a pity that it should have been in danger of being forgotten." After paying tribute to the work of Professor Fenska and the University of Oregon, Mr. Lever continues, "Where the tradition of this Davy Crockett of the axe, this Superman of the camps, originated, nobody can tell exactly, but it is probable that the stories of his courage and impossible feats started on the St. Lawrence, among the French Canadians, and filtered into the woods of the Adirondacks, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Although at times very human, Paul Bunyan in his bigger moments far surpassed any of the figures of classical Scandinavian or Celtic legend. For the sake of the young of the land,